Have you ever felt like you're not alone, even when you know no one else is in the house with you? The hairs on the back of your neck stand on end and you begin to feel uneasy. That's when you start to hear sounds, but you tell yourself it's just the wind. Well, that's exactly what the people on this list told themselves. However, the truth turned out to be something much more evil. Here are 10 terrifying tales of creepy poltergeists. Number 10 is the Rosenheim Poltergeist. German parapsychologist Hans Bender investigated an infamous poltergeist case during the 1960s. As with many similar cases, the Rosenheim poltergeist phenomena revolved around a single person. That person was 19-year-old Anne-Marie Chaberel. Anne-Marie worked at a lawyer's office, and it was there that the strange disturbances took place. It became clear that destructive forces were at play, which made lighting fixtures explode and moved heavy furniture around on their own. Investigators claimed that when Anne-Marie left the office, the activity ceased. Upon investigation, it was discovered that there was a malevolent spirit that was following Anne-Marie around. But unlike many poltergeists who simply leave their torment at home, this one followed her to the workplace and everywhere she went. Number 9 is the Seaford Poltergeist. The Seaford Poltergeist is a well-documented case that took place in Seaford, Long Island back in 1958. During this time, the alleged poltergeist terrorized an entire family in their home, throwing items around such as figurines and constantly opening bottles and pouring out the contents. Frightened by the activity, the family brought in a team of paranormal investigators, including world-famous J.B. Rhine. What Ryan and his colleagues discovered was truly terrifying. What they discovered was recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, the movement of things on their own around the house. In the end, 67 individual disturbances were recorded before the poltergeist suddenly ceased. No one knows why the poltergeist first appeared or why it eventually disappeared. Number 8 is the Great Amherst Mystery. One of the most notorious poltergeist cases in history, the Great Amherst Mystery has never been solved. Taking place in Amherst, Nova Scotia, the poltergeist activity was recorded from 1878 to 1879. Centering on a young woman, Esther Cox, the activity began in the aftermath of Esther being sexually assaulted. That's when strange noises such as knocking, banging, and rustling began happening throughout her home at night. It was then that Esther suddenly became feverish. Objects were thrown violently by an unseen hand, and on the wall above Esther's bed, the words "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill" appeared. In addition, small fires began to break out across the property, and it was quickly discovered that Esther herself was blamed for the arson, although she doesn't remember setting the fires. The poltergeist phenomena continued for years after that, before finally fading away with no explanation. Number 7 is Carol Compton. Carol Compton was at the center of a trial in the 1980s, during which she was accused of being a witch, but some believe that she was actually the victim of a poltergeist. Moving from Scotland to Italy in 1982, Carol became a nanny for the Ricci family. After a series of fires broke out, Carol was let go, despite the authorities claiming that electrical faults had been the cause. After this, Carol became a nanny for another family, but she soon complained about scratching noises in her new home and religious statues being smashed out of sight. When a fire broke out in a child's room, Carol was finally arrested. However, she was found not guilty after it was discovered that it may have been the work of a poltergeist. Though she quickly isolated herself after this incident, strange occurrences continued to happen around her, leading many to believe that she was still haunted by a poltergeist. Number 6 was the Danny Poltergeist. While poltergeist activity often centers on a person or place, it can also attach itself to an object. And that's exactly what happened when it came to the Danny poltergeist. In 1998, Al Cobb of Savannah, Georgia, bought a vintage bed from the 1800s at auction as a present for his teenage son, Jason. However, just 3 nights later, Jason claimed that something invisible was in bed with him, breathing down his neck. After objects were being thrown on the bed by the poltergeist, Jason's father left a sheet of paper and some crayons in the bedroom, asking the spirit to identify itself. That's when Cobb re-entered the room, only to find the name Danny and the number 7 scrawled across the paper. After objects began to be thrown directly at Jason from an unseen hand, he decided no longer to sleep in the antique bed for fear that the poltergeist would become increasingly violent. Kind of makes you wonder where your bed has been, or even what's under it. Number 5 is Thornton Heath. The Thornton Heath poltergeist was an alleged case of supernatural activity which created a storm within the paranormal investigative community. The activity began in 1938 in London and focused on a 35-year-old woman named Miss Forbes. At her home, objects moved on their own, strange sounds emanated from the walls, and Miss Forbes, her husband, and her young son were terrified. The case was investigated by psychologist Nandor Fodor, who observed much of the phenomena, even observing Miss Forbes being choked by an unseen hand. It was later concluded that it was indeed the result of a poltergeist. Miss Forbes was in the clutches of an evil demonic force, one which science has yet to explain. Number 4 is the Mackey poltergeist. In one of the earliest documented instances of poltergeist activity, the Mackey poltergeist in 1696 remains infamous. The family of Andrew Mackey was the focus for the phenomena, which included rocks being thrown, buildings spontaneously catching fire, and disembodied voices crying out. In some of the more harrowing accounts, family members were allegedly beaten by a poltergeist entity and then dragged across the ground. Several notes written in blood were also found. Documented by a local minister, he claimed that Andrew Mackey took an oath to give his firstborn child to the devil, and that his act had welcomed a poltergeist into his home. The activity only ceased when an exorcism was carried out. Today, all that remains of the Mackey farm is the stump of a dead tree, which locals still believe is haunted. Number 3 is the Burleigh Rectory. Dubbed the most haunted house in England, the Burleigh Rectory played host to frightening poltergeist activity. Built in 1862 after an earlier house had burned to the ground, the Burleigh Rectory was home to the local reverend of Burleigh Church and his family. Many claimed to see strange apparitions wandering the estate, and the house gained an infamous reputation due to the sound of phantom bells being rung, writing scrawled on the walls, windows shattering, and even residents being thrown from their beds. One of the residents claimed that he had been attacked by something horrible that he could not describe. After numerous investigations by famed investigator Harry Price, the house burned to the ground in 1939. As of today, nothing remains of it, though stories persist of strange lights and sounds coming from where the house once stood. Number 2 is the Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist is without a doubt one of the most documented poltergeist cases of all time. Taking place in England between 1977 and 1979, it has been the basis for several books and major motion pictures. Investigated by famed inventor Maurice Grosse, the poltergeist activity focused on the children of a single parent, Peggy Hodgson. Among credible witnesses to the phenomena, a police constable claimed furniture moved on its own, demonic voices appeared out of thin air, and that the children even levitated, as if being lifted up by by an unknown force. With this particular poltergeist, it only acted when it was not being watched, and many believe that the Enfield case remains one of the best pieces of documented evidence for the existence of poltergeists. And number 1 is the Columbus Poltergeist. This event took place in 1984 and subsequently led to a tragedy. The phenomena revolved around Tina Resch, who was 15 at the time. Investigated by parapsychologist William Roll, Tina and her family claimed that they were preyed upon by a malevolent ghost which threw objects around the house with force. What William Roll discovered was that objects did in fact move by themselves, and that Tina was caught on camera knocking an object over without knowledge of even doing it. It was upon being caught on camera that she immediately told investigators to leave the home. But perhaps the most disturbing of all is that she was later convicted for the death of her 3-year-old daughter, Amber. Her friends and family knew that this could not be her, and that it could only be supernatural forces at play causing her to do these horrific acts. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it in the future, subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for my new uploads. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.